Hi, everyone. I'm looking forward to what you're going to be sharing with us this week in class. For those of you online, um, I'm looking forward to your presentations. Of course, you'll be doing this online with a voiceover, but for the on ground, you'll be doing this in class. And for anyone who would like to also kind of sneak in, from the on ground from the online folks and just get a little bit of information about what some of your other peers are doing, please do, because I think this would be a good thing. So let's think a little. Let's kind of talk a little bit through some of this. Um, we want to be able for you to communicate your work. You've been working hard this semester, and so you've got something important to say. You've got something to say that your colleagues and related medical, health, and human and social services professionals need to hear. You've picked your topics, you've been working, you've been struggling with deadlines, you've been working with people who don't call you back, all these kind of things. And so we want to hear what you've got to say. Um, if you're not a great writer, that's still okay. This comes, and it's one of those things um, that we kind of work on because practice does make perfect in this kind of an aspect. So your basic format, and we would like for you to use this. I'll count points off if you don't follow the guidelines that were given to you in the for the written report, and also for your giving us some information too for your slides. So your basic format, you know, really this is not done until your report is written. So, you know, your typical audience, what we're thinking about, you know, they could be scholars like yourselves, could be researchers. Think about how you're going to report this back to your stakeholders, because this would be a good way to kind of do that as well too, and your peers. And so there's a basic format that we generally use that we want you to use. Of course, there are always adages to this, but let's start out with this way, and then you can see where you want to go with that. So in your background section, you know, tell us a little bit from the lit review, you know, that you used to design and develop this, you know, because your secondary sources are very important. It's what gives you some credibility. It helps to put your study into perspective, and it gives rationale and support for actually what you're wanting to do. Checking on my cat there. I'm in a coma, in a carbohydrate coma. She is in a food coma, and hopefully she won't lick herself while we're doing that. So my apologies. um, so in your methods, you know, you've got your method sections. Will give us some really good information. And so, you know, you're going to describe your participants. You're going to describe the procedure. You're going to describe your variables. So the who, what, when, where, how, and why. So please be sure that you give us adequate. Make sure that you are explaining methods. A lot of times people think it's like the driest thing in a report, and it is, but you're laying the groundwork for us, and you're telling us exactly how you went about doing what you did, and that's going to be very important. So keep that in mind. So please do that. If you are doing mixed methods, which some of you are, you want to be able to, if you can, think about triangulation. You know, so if you've got more than one method in the study of the same phenomenon, that's good. And these can both be used in quantitative and also in qualitative research. Your results section, you know, presented in the order that the research question or data was collected. So we would like for you to be specific, be concise, be logical, and let the data, as much as possible, you know, the data will tell you exactly what needs to. Don't give us an opinion piece. This is not an expose. You're going in a very similar way to report on what you've taught, what you wanted to talk about here. And for presenting your data, simple is usually better. I know we like bells and whistles, and we like all these little things and these how we get our slides to do fancy things, but really it's more of a bother than anything, I think, sometimes. Make it as simple as possible. Graphic displays are appropriate for your results. So, you know, it helps you illustrate your findings. It makes it easier to read. It gives you some additional information. Um, it helps us to understand your findings, and a lot of times that tables and graphs can be very self-explanatory. And for those of you who did qualitative, you would want to be able to include something that would support your findings, and so we would be looking for direct quotations from your participants. There's a lot of writing that goes on. It's your interpretation of the results, and it's not just willy-nilly, but you're also being informed by the research itself, by your lit reviews. It's not a restatement of what you found, but really, here are my results. So what does all this mean? This is where you're going to kind of reconcile things in accordance to the context of the literature reviews that you did. And so if your literature review is very strong, then this should be a lot easier. And you can also give us some implications of the results that you think might be very helpful for us to know. Limitations and conclusions. This doesn't, it's people have general thoughts on this but if I admit my limitations, that means I wasn't a very good researcher. That's not the case at all. There's always limitations. Self-reported. Some of you have convenience samples. Some of you, there could be, tell us what those limitations are. And I think I've been pretty explicit with some of you that be sure to list this in your limitations, whether it's the variables, the methods, or the sample. It's good because it lets people know that you are very much aware that this is a work in process. It's not perfect, but research isn't perfect, and this is how we move forward. So these could be standalones or included at the end of your discussion section. And then, of course, your conclusions. Give us a summary of your findings and their importance. And so you would want to list those things that are most important. I think part of the challenge sometimes is trying to understand what's different, what's important and what's not, what's primary and what is secondary. And that comes with practice. So even maybe in your presentations that we'll take a look at for the on ground tomorrow and for the online, that maybe what would be helpful would be, once again, you can give feedback to folks. And it's not being overly critical, it's to help make them a better student and a better researcher. But I'm not a great writer. Well, none of us are. It takes practice, and it can be exhausting. But when you finally find your stride, it can be a really kind of a nice things too. So, some of the issues that we have that we kind of see is that we don't want careless writing. Make it purposeful. Not linking things back to published research. If you have unclear goals and objectives, some of that came back to you this week too, asking for some additional information, and then gaps in methods, results, and discussion. So really walking us through this bit by bit is, as tedious as that may sound, gives us a better picture. Don't assume that we understand. Don't assume that we know that you did so and so. Make sure that you kind of did that. In your presentation, it's going to affect how your report is received, and so these are some of the common writing problems that you may experience. And in tips, if it's first draft, I'm going to know it, and it's going to be terrible. It's always terrible. So don't write just a first draft. Hopefully you've not been preparing for this presentation. You've been thinking about this. Of course, your papers due a little bit later. Don't write this paper the night before the day it's due. You're going to miss some things. Every paper is too long. Proofreading is important. It's always important. Good reports were well written, well-constructed sentences, no grammatical errors, no spelling mistakes. And so I'm kind of a word Nazi a little bit on that. Sentences should follow each other logically. Paragraphs should be used appropriately. And so, how do we do this? And so, work from an outline. You've got that outline. Follow the guidelines. Make it interesting. There's a place for all of this. It doesn't have to be boring, and hopefully it's going to make sense as well too. And then in the body of your report, um, it's going to help you because it's going to demonstrate command of the subject, which, you are students, but you're also master's level students, and we're happy to have you here. And we're going to learn from you, and you're going to learn from us. And so, clarify terms and concepts that we as the reader may be unfamiliar with. Define any kind of jargon or acronyms that you're using. And you're really kind of leading us by the hand. Tell us and lead us to where you want to go. Create logical flow from section to section. Use the headers, use subheaders that support intended flow of report. And this would also help us because it helps us break down some complex ideas. I am really looking forward to looking at your stuff. You've spent a lot of time on this, and you should be proud of this. And in the body of your report, let's think about generalizations. Anything that you say, and I think you've gotten this so far this semester, I'm always looking for citations. It's not an opinion piece. It's not firsthand knowledge. You should be able to cite this one way or the other. Cite your credible sources. Provide research support for any theoretical claims that you may have. Explain and cite ideas that we may have. And using precise language is this, that, it, sparingly, because some of you've gotten reports when you say they, like, well, who is they, or this. Make sure that we understand. Make pronoun references to earlier nouns clear. Make sure that we understand what you're talking about, that there's no room for misunderstanding. Paragraphs. This is kind of going back to what we all learned growing up, explaining one idea at a time per paragraph. Lead with a strong topic sentence. Clarify the content. Don't make it mushy. And reflect clear interrelations among sentences. So, there should be some logical follow through there. Make connections between sentences in a paragraph. Avoid a sense of disconnect jumping from sentence to sentence, paragraph to paragraph. So that'll be move from general to specific, that you're leading us into an idea that we need to consider. Open with a general statement, follow with details and examples. So that's what we would want you to do. And most important of all, give yourself some time to review and to revise. Again, not your first draft. Think about it. If something doesn't make sense, if I have contacted you and asked you to reword because I might know what you mean, but it's a little bit muddy, we want to do this, okay? So this is for your written report. I'm going to do another. I'm going to do another little focus here just on your oral presentation that I'm looking forward to. So I will sign this off and we'll do part 2 then, okay?